Welcome to This Explainer. Have you ever stopped to wonder what actually protects the trillions of dollars and exabytes of private data, including your own, zipping around our globe every single second? Well, today we're taking an incredible journey. We're going to start in those massive, air-conditioned server rooms we always see in the movies and go all the way down to the ancient mathematics that actually secure them. Let's get right to it. Okay, let's dive into this. When you look at these physical fortresses, the neon-lit, steel-reinforced server rooms, they look completely impenetrable, right? But the truth is, those physical doors are just the outermost shell. The real protection, the absolute core of our modern digital world, relies on invisible walls, built entirely out of math. Which brings us to Section 1, the core of cybersecurity. So the foundation of this core is something called the CIA triad. And first up is the C. Confidentiality. Think of this as a strict for-your-eyes-only mandate at the network level. Our main goal here is preserving authorized restrictions on data access. We basically want to stop unauthorized actors from tearing open digital envelopes and stealing proprietary corporate data or personal messages. It's the exact kind of failure we see in those massive headline-making breaches like Equifax. But here's a question for you. When a server actually receives a file, how does it know that data is exactly what it claims to be? That is where integrity comes in. It's all about guarding against improper modification. Integrity guarantees both the sender and the receiver that the contents haven't been intercepted, tampered with, or altered in any way while in transit. It's perfectly intact. And finally, we have availability, because think about it. A perfectly locked digital vault is completely useless if even the rightful owner can't get inside. This rule ensures timely, reliable access to information. It prevents systems from being overwhelmed and crashed by malicious actors who might be launching things like massive denial-of-service attacks. So that's our CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Moving right along to Section 2, anatomy of a cyber attack. Let's see what actually threatens that triad. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the fascinating contrast that emerges when we break these attacks down. On one side, we've got passive attacks. These are essentially the silent wiretaps of the digital world. The attacker simply eavesdrops. They are reading message contents or just analyzing traffic patterns. And they are incredibly difficult to detect because the data stream isn't altered at all. You literally never know they're there. Now, contrast that with active attacks. These are the loud, disruptive, forged IDs of the cyber world. An attacker might masquerade as a legitimate user, they might replay an old authentication message to trick a server, or launch a massive denial of service to completely overload the whole system. So while passive attacks are hard to detect, active attacks are notoriously difficult to absolutely prevent. Up next is Section 3, the cryptography toolkit. This is how we fight back. We basically have three main hero tools designed to thwart these threats by brilliantly transforming our data. First, we have keyless algorithms, like hash functions. These act kind of like an unforgeable wax seal that proves data integrity. Second, single-key algorithms. These use symmetric ciphers. Think of it like a lockbox where you and a friend share the exact same physical key. And third, two-key algorithms, which use asymmetric public and private keys. Imagine a padlock that literally anyone can snap shut with a public key, but only the one person holding the unique private key can actually unlock it. Pretty clever, right? That takes us to Section 4, establishing digital trust. Because in a digital environment that's absolutely full of masquerades, replays, and man-in-the-middle attacks, how do we actually trust anyone? Well, trust isn't just a gut feeling here. It's a carefully calculated model. Perceived trustworthiness relies on three core factors. First, ability. Can the entity actually do the task securely? Second, benevolence. Do they genuinely intend no harm? And third, integrity. Do they strictly adhere to acceptable security principles? Based on this specific model, computer systems constantly decide if they're willing to tolerate the risk of sharing your private data. But scaling this up globally, that requires deeply verified relationships. We can't just cross our fingers and hope for the best. To protect the vast ocean of information flowing across the globe, we scale trust using mandated policies, direct historical track records, and mediated relationships. That's where a mutually trusted third party, like a certificate authority, steps in and acts as a guarantor for the millions of interactions happening every single second.
All right, let's move to Section 5, the math behind security, and see how this all builds together.
We call this the secret language of computers, number theory. Now, I know that might sound intimidating and incredibly complex, but here is a surprising fact for you. The perfectly secure digital encryption running on our multi-billion-dollar networks today relies heavily on the exact same basic math you learned in grade school. I'm talking about basic division and simple remainders. That's it. Enter the Euclidean algorithm. This is a 2,000-year-old method invented by the Greek mathematician Euclid to find the greatest common divisor between two numbers. It's actually super simple. You just divide a first number a by a second number b to get a remainder. If that remainder is 0, boom, b is your answer. But if it's not 0, you just shift your values over. A becomes b becomes the remainder, and you loop the division again until you finally hit 0. This simple, elegant looping division trick is a fundamental building block that currently protects our most sensitive digital communications. And this division trick leads us directly to a concept called modular arithmetic. Instead of math sitting on an infinite, never-ending straight line, I want you to think of modular arithmetic as math that wraps around in a circle, just like the numbers on a clock face. You're mapping all integers into a fixed set defined by a modulus. It functions exactly like the rotating tumbler in a combination lock. You spin it past the maximum number, and it just rolls right back to 0 and starts all over again. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how that works in practice. In an arithmetic modulo 8 table, you only ever see the numbers 0 through 7. So if you add 4 and 5 normally, you get 9, right? But on a modulo 8 clock, you go past 7, hit 0, and land on 1. It's these predictable boundaries, symmetric patterns, and repeating loops that actually allow computer systems to reliably encrypt and decrypt massive blocks of data without the numbers growing infinitely large and just completely crashing their memory. Which brings us to a fascinating final thought for this explainer. We've journeyed from massive, glowing modern server rooms all the way back to the brilliant mind of Euclid in ancient Greece. Our cutting-edge digital vaults are fundamentally secured by the pure elegance of centuries-old math. So I'll leave you with this provocative question. If the absolute foundation of our modern digital world relies so heavily on ancient mathematical secrets, what other ancient concepts are just waiting out there to secure our future? Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll catch you on the next one.